How's it going, everyone? Uh, so it's been 2 years since I quit the NFL and joined System One as a software engineer. I was kind of thinking about on what the last 2 years have been like and what I've learned and all the different ways I've grown. And I decided to create what was going to be a 2 or 3 sentence like inspirational post on LinkedIn. When I started to sit down and think about what's happened over the last 2 years, that 2 or 3 sentence post turned into a full LinkedIn article. If you haven't seen it yet, I've linked to it below. And if you don't have me on LinkedIn, please hit me up on LinkedIn. I post a lot there. I've had a lot of good success with LinkedIn, and it's been my bread and butter for the past year. Today, I just want to talk about my experience over the last 2 years at my current company as a software engineer. So a little bit of background. Before working at System One, I was working at the National Football League, and I can do a whole video on that. I'm actually planning on doing a whole video on that. It was a great gig. I got really lucky. I worked with some freaking smart people on some really cool technology. We actually worked on like React really early, right when React had just come out. So I was working on some absolutely bleeding edge JavaScript and like learned a ton. So why did I jump over to a System One then? Basically at the time, as a Canadian, my immigration process at NFL just wasn't going where I wanted to do. And so I really had to make a decision. I had to focus on getting like my immigration stuff figured out. And right in the middle of me interviewing for different jobs, my boss at the NFL announced that he was leaving. And there's one thing that I've learned is when you have a good boss, like just stick with him. Like just stick with him. So when he announced that he was leaving NFL, I was like, hey man, I'll come with you. Like wherever you're going, it's like as long as the place can get me the green card and you give me the raise that I asked for, I'm down, 100% down. That's how I stumbled into System One. I actually didn't know what the company did before I interviewed. And normally I recommend everyone before you interview to like scour their corporate website, figure out exactly what they do. And that way when you come to the interview, you're extremely prepared and you can show how passionate you are about where you're working. But at the time, System One's corporate site had like nothing. So I really didn't know what they did. I was very confused about their business model. But I figured, hey, like my boss has a wife and kids. I trust him. Worst case scenario, I know he's not going to fire me because we get along really well. We have this 2.5 year long relationship. And it's kind of like the best of both worlds. I'll get to try something new, but there really isn't that much risk because the main risk you have to worry about is your boss not liking you. And if you already have that, you're gold. When I joined System One the very first day, I'm not gonna lie, I was very nervous. I had just got this like senior software engineer title. And so I felt like this need to prove myself. But at the same time, like I walked in and pulled down that code base for the first time and I really missed knowing like every single part of the code base because at the NFL I'd worked there for 2.5 years. I knew the entire deployment pipeline. I knew pretty much any error you could get with Jenkins, I could like fix it for you right away. And so I became the kind of go-to person for fixing any builds. And that's really great. I really like my favorite part of my job is helping people and helping fix their problems and helping other engineers like 10x their output. Like that's what I absolutely love doing. So coming to System One, not being able to deploy the project made me super uncomfortable. Not understanding any of the code made me uncomfortable. I didn't know which teams to really talk to. Like for example, at NFL, I already had these relationships. I had the relationship with the infrastructure team and like my 2 or 3 go-to guys on that team that I can count on pushing things through. And when I joined System One, the only relationship I had was with my boss, and he had just only been there for about a month longer than I had. First thing I did was really focus on making those friendships, first with my direct coworkers, and then identifying people on other teams who I think I could build relationships with. So I made sure, like, I did the simple stuff, like show up 10 minutes early every day, to like figure out who like the early crew was, ask everyone what their name was, write down all their names on a piece of paper. I remember doing that. I actually remembered asking my boss before I joined the names of every single person I interviewed with and like what they look like, and I wrote it all down before I even I even started my first day, so that way I would remember them all by name. And you know, I wasn't perfect, but like that little bit of extra effort really helped. But you know what? I'm not gonna lie. Like the first couple of weeks at this new job was tough. I was completely out of my comfort zone. I really felt like I was like System One was transitioning from being like a startup at the time to like a bigger company, and like me, my boss, and some other people who had just kind of recently been hired were like part of that group to help push him forward to from startup to a bigger company. But like I said, at the time there was really not a whole lot on the testing side. The team had done an excellent job like getting started on testing and getting started with setting things up like ESLint, but none of it was automated. So I did what I always do, started writing down every single possible fix and improvement I could identify, put them in Jira tickets, and came to my boss saying like, here's what I think I can fix. Is there anything higher priority for me to work on? And he's like, you know what? No, go ahead. Start fixing stuff. So I started setting up ESLint, setting up the automation, setting up the PR builder, learning how the build worked, learning how the deploys worked, and automating every little bit I could and like adding to the doc on how to deploy the site. And you know what? I'm not gonna lie. The second week or so, I remember having a one-on-one with my boss, and I was like, Christian, I don't know if like, I'm worried, man. I'm worried that I might have made the wrong decision here. I'm like, I'm so overwhelmed. Like, there's so much stuff to fix. There's so much stuff to change. Like, there's so much stuff to learn. Man, I'm getting really nervous. And I remember he said, like, honestly, stick with me. Like, we're gonna make a difference here. We're gonna like transform this whole org. And that was pretty exciting. Looking back over the last 2 years, man, what's the saying? People overestimate what they can do in a day, but underestimate what they can do a year. Could not be more true. I remember feeling overwhelmed, seeing all this stuff to like improve and just knocking one bit at a time, slowly but surely. And I look back after 1 year, we had automated deploys on the quiz project. We went from deploying like once every 2 weeks, once every week, to once or twice a day, automatically deploying to stage on every merge to master, automatically running end-to-end tests on every merge, on every deploy to stage and every deploy to production. And like, it was cool because like I did that. Like, I remember when the folder with the Jenkins scripts was empty, and then looking back 2 years later, I'm like, these are all filled up. It's like running like a well-oiled machine. I also remember creating the first kind of modern JavaScript project and setting up Lerna and like kind of building a mono repo for JavaScript projects. But at the time, we just had one project in the mono repo. But the long-term vision was like, oh, we'll turn around in 2 years and maybe we'll have like 10 of them. And now we have like 15 projects, and it's all my infrastructure code, managing all these projects, managing all the tests, and that's pretty exciting. And I went from trying to get buy-in from my direct team to set up things like ESLint and set up things like Flow and TypeScript, which I'm going to do a whole freaking video on how to get buy-in from your team, because it's honestly the most important thing as a software engineer. And now I'm at the point where I was able to reach out to other teams in other cities, like people in Seattle, people in Bellevue, different developers in Canada, and getting them like on top of the infrastructure that I started, and seeing other engineers work on my infra and improve my infrastructure without me even asking. It's It's almost like running an open source project, but inside a company, and it's really, really cool. Some advice to anyone starting at a brand new company. Maybe you've worked somewhere for 2 years and you switched, or maybe you've worked somewhere for like 5 or 6 years and you're switching. Number one is make sure you do excellent work all the time, no matter what. It doesn't matter if you find out your coworker who does less than you makes more. Like, don't let that get you down. Focus on doing your own job and doing great work. And the reason why is, even if you're not getting the raise at this company, dude, every single day is a job interview. I was able to jump ship from NFL and come here and get a raise and get this immigration figured out because I did great work every day for 2.5 years. Now notice I'm saying do great work. Don't overwork. Like, you can do great work within 40 hours a week. Maybe some weeks 50 hours. Like, you can do great work within 40 and 50 hours a week. It's super doable. People confused being stressed with being fast. Very, very common. I'll see that all the time. I'll see teams and companies say like, oh, we move fast, but in reality, they're just moving stressed. Where I move generally 90% of the time calmly and with focus and organization. And we end up shipping features faster that way. So remember that. Do good work. Focus on it being good. You don't need to like burn yourself out here. Next, when you're at a new company, you really got to focus on building relationships. Finally, I almost feel like dumb saying this. Have that positive attitude. Nobody cares how fancy your code is. They actually prefer if it's simple. I've never heard anyone complain about a coworker's simple code, but man, have I heard people complain about some coworkers super fancy like RX code that they don't understand. It's that positive attitude to help lift up the spirits of the rest of the team does wonders. Because at the end of the day, like, you're working with these people, like, a third of your life is work. And if you can be that person who brings in the positivity, like, does absolute volumes, not only for your well-being and the other people's well-being, but like for your career. There have been situations, not just at this job, but at other jobs where unfortunately, like, I've talked to coworkers and seen that someone who we're interviewing has worked for the same company as a previous company as one of my current coworkers, and just asked them like, oh, is so-and-so good? I've heard people say, and like, he's a great engineer, but he's a jerk. And we end up not hiring him. And we end up not even interviewing them. And like, you gotta be careful because life's short and the world's a lot smaller than you think. And if you're trying to be that kind of like excellent engineer who's a jerk to people, like, you're not gonna progress, not only just career-wise, but like human relationship and friendship-wise. So really take this, like, be positive and focus on people advice, like, to heart here. A good example of this is Tech Lead actually addressed, I love watching Tech Lead's videos, by the way. I think he's hilarious. I'm definitely Team Tech Lead, but he had a video kind of mentioning this, how he's kind of pissed people off in the past and not kept these relationships with people as he's progressed through his career. And he has some people who ended up becoming VPs and CTOs that would have really helped his career, but by burning the bridge, he wasn't able to jump across at that, which is a real shame. Because in general, he seems like a nice enough guy, but it seems like he kind of gives me the vibe that he's one of those engineers who might earlier in his career spend too much time on engineering and not enough time on the people side. But I think now that he's older, he's kind of figured out how important it was. Thanks again for watching this video. Let me know if you've had similar experience switching jobs and what the kind of things you've done to like get acclimated to a new job, and any little piece of advice you found, or which pieces of advice you found interesting in this video, or any more questions you have. Thanks again, and I'll catch you in the next video.